Good afternoon, and welcome to this presentation of Social Venture Partners Dallas. At Social Venture Partners Dallas, we are an organization of engaged men and women who bring their time, talent, and financial resources together for the greatest impact possible. I would like to say a few words of thanks to a couple of folks who brought their networks to bear to help me bring this session together. Candace Hicks-Coleman from the Mavs organization was very instrumental in helping us do this. I appreciate that. Ian Fuhrer, our social venture partner, was also influential in helping us. And of course, our DISD trustee, Dustin Marshall. So thank you to you three for bringing your networks together to help us produce this, bring this great panel to you today. This is the fourth installment over 5 weeks of our Social Venture Partners Response series. During this time, we have had over 3,500 people tune in to learn how individuals, organizations, and public entities are responding to the social impact of COVID-19. We want to ensure that our audience can access these conversations for free with no barriers to participation. That is why for us, as a nonprofit ourselves, partnerships lie at the heart of what we do and allow us to continue our work in the community. We build the capacity of social enterprises, both for-profit and nonprofit, that are working in the community. And so we are grateful for the support of wonderful sponsors and individuals who contribute to our work. Today, we are most grateful to our lead sponsor, who is Bank of America. And we are so grateful to Jennifer Chandler for being with us. I invite Jennifer to join and want to just offer my congratulations to Jennifer on her own success in her own leadership, and also our gratitude to Bank of America and to Jennifer for all the great work that you do in North Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, and to Giles, Emily, and the SVP team. I'm so thrilled to be here today. And again, I'm Jennifer Chandler, and I'm Market President for Bank of America, and I'm privileged to lead over 13,500 associates right here in North Texas with my colleague, Mike Pavel, who helps lead our team in Fort Worth. During these times, as we fight the crisis, collaborative leadership is critical, so we're thrilled to sponsor today's discussion. I'd like to focus on 3 areas today: our clients, our associates, and community, and give you a brief update. Those are the 3 areas we continue to focus on. First, our clients. As we think about the CARES Act and the Payment Protection Program, PPP, that you're all familiar with, I'm pleased to say we were one of the first banks to stand up a program and took over 390,000 applications. I'm also pleased to say over 184,000 were submitted to the SBA just this week, with another 48,000 ready to go. What's great about those applications are that they truly mirror our population and also the intent of the program. Over 98% of our applications are for companies with 100 or less employees, and over 76% for companies with less than 10 employees. Our associates are truly working night and day, 24/7 to prepare those applications. In addition to the PPP program, we've deferred over 1 million payments for our associates and over 104,000 payments right here in Texas. In addition, we've offered $250 million in capital and $10 million in grants to CDFIs and community businesses and minority-owned businesses. Secondly, our associates. We already had a phenomenal benefit program that we've added to it. As it relates to childcare, and I'm a mother of 4, so I can appreciate this, we offer $100 per day for backup care. And you can now include a loved one, a neighbor, a family member, as we know many childcare facilities are closed, and that's so important to our community right now. And Dr. Hinojosa, I have to say I appreciate you and your staff and our educators now more than ever as I'm homeschooling my own. In addition, we've offered a special incentive program for our associates working on the front lines in our banking centers. And we have over 138 banking centers right here in North Texas. We're also keeping them safe with hand sanitizers, deep cleaning each and every day, and gloves for those that are handling cash. And lastly, our community, but not least. We've done over $100 million in support during this time. That's for the coronavirus to help with healthcare, food, education, and needs all across the country. And of those funds, $3 million are right here in Texas, and I'm pleased to say over $1.8 million right here in North Texas. We've also lowered our matching gift program to just $1, and many of you on the line understand that is important. With over 13,000 associates in North Texas who are philanthropic, those dollars truly add up. So again, we're so thrilled to sponsor today, and I'm thrilled to be on the line with our panelists. I'm happy to introduce them. Our very own Cynt Marshall, CEO of the Dallas Mavericks. And Cynt, I have on my Mavericks blue for you today.
All right, go Mavs.
So good to see you.
Good to
and
see you.
Dallas County Judge Clay Jenkins, who I know is working 24/7 for all of us, and Dr. Michael Hinojosa, Superintendent of DISD. Each of these distinguished leaders are tasked with evaluating the complexities of their organization, balancing the safety of their associates in our community, but also maintaining our economy. So I'm so thrilled they're with us today. We're truly grateful for their leadership and SVP. And Tony, I'll turn it over to you for a great discussion around thinking globally and acting locally.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, and thank you for all the great work you're doing in our community. You know, I am thrilled to have this esteemed panel, the between 12 and 1,500 guests that we have joining us today. I would love to take credit for that and say that I have a great cult following out there, but I know that that is not the case. I know that our audience is tuned in to hear from you phenomenal leaders, and we are so grateful that you are joining us. You know, it is said that leaders are made, they're not born. And I want to talk about, just jump into the conversation about, you know, your personal lives. You're all extraordinary leaders. You have been so incredible in this local community, and we are so grateful for what you've done. I want to ask you a little bit about those growing up years. Each of you experienced some adversity in your formative years. And we know that those kinds of adversities can go one of two ways, and you have seemed to have done the best possible with yours. So, Mrs. Marshall, I'm going to jump right in with you and ask you to talk about how your upbringing and what you went through early on that you talk about freely affected your leadership style and how you bring yourself fully to the work that you do.
Awesome. First of all, Tony, thank you for pulling us all together. I actually participated as a viewer in the very first session that you pulled together, so I appreciate that. My good friend Rosalind Dawson, who heads the Texas Women's Foundation, was one of the three participants, and it was amazing and insightful, and really helped us pull our plan together, our community plan. So thank you for what you are doing, and of course I have to thank all of the healthcare workers and first responders for what they're doing out there. Hopefully everybody has their Mavs yard sign. It's behind me, where we're just trying to blitz the city to say thank you. So I had to start with that because, of course, what is going on right now is so not about me. It's really about me. But I'll be happy to talk about me. You know, I've been very open about my journey and growing up in a public housing project, growing up in poverty, and really it has truly shaped how I lead, how I manage, and who I am right now. And I call it my POV. And yes, it is my point of view, but it also stands for preparation, optimism, and the value of the village. In terms of preparation, I was taught that, my mother taught me, it's not where you live, it's how you live. And with God, all things are possible. And so even though we were in a public housing project, even though we witnessed some things that were not great in terms of shootings and things going on that directly impacted our household. And yes, my parents divorced when I was 15, and my father left us with very little, a mattress for me and my younger sister to sleep on. My mom told us that it was going to be okay, and all we needed to do was focus. And so she put a math book in one hand and a Bible in the other, told me to focus, told me to dig in, told me to really value education. And she taught me that and taught me the value of preparing. And fortunately, I had 3 teachers and a principal who really embraced me when I was 15 years old and decided that I was going to college and do something with my life. And so I just love, love, love educators. Dr. Hinojosa, thank you for what you and all your folks do. And he, by the way, is on our Dallas Mavericks Advisory Council. But they taught me, these educators and the folks in the village taught me the value of preparing and being ready for whatever was going to happen in life, good, bad, or ugly. And then optimism. And many of you know that my theme song is Ain't No Mountain High Enough, because I believe that, and I was taught that. And no matter what was going on in our life, even when my mother was trying to figure out how she was going to feed everybody, there was always a sense of optimism. And I bring that to work every day. I try to bring it to the wonderful, wonderful people at the Dallas Mavericks. I try to bring it to our fans, and just let people know that we will get through this, and there ain't no mountain high enough. We will be there for each other. So the village, and that takes me to the value of the village. People took me places, people who didn't look like me embraced me, took me places that I didn't even know existed, exposed me to things. I was the beneficiary of inclusion before we even started talking about diversity and inclusion. And I know that's one of the reasons it's so important to me right now, because the village stepped in to make sure that I had a bright future. My zip code didn't matter. They didn't care that I lived in 94804 in the San Francisco Bay Area. So preparation, optimism, and I think the value of the village has shaped me into the servant leader that I am today. And I'm proud to be the leader of the folks at the Mavs. Go Mavs.
We are so grateful to have your leadership in our community, and we thank you for bringing your lived experience and lessons learned to the work that you do. I'm going to throw this question to Judge Clay Jenkins. Judge, we are so fortunate to have you with us. We know that you are extraordinarily busy. You are leading a community through one of the toughest times we will ever experience, and you have been doing a fantastic job for us, and we appreciate that. One of our other sessions that we led was around mental health, and we know more and more about how trauma affects children and grief affects children, and we know that in your own life, you had some of that early on in your own lived experience. Talk to us about those growing up years and some of the experiences that brought you to this point today and have shaped you to be the leader that you are for us.
Sure. And as I get started, hey, Cynt, check it out. So Mavs fan for life. We're all products of where we've been, right? And we've all been through some stuff, right? So when I was 7, I watched my father suffer a fatal heart attack in front of me at a park in Oak Cliff. And, after we buried him, his brother went to the doctor. He worked for the phone company, so he had health insurance. And he went to the doctor and he found out that he had the same congenital heart problem my dad did. And he lived another 43 years, long enough to meet his great-great-grandchildren. And so that really gives me a passion towards healthcare. And what we're seeing now, as I have to name off these folks who die every day from COVID, increasingly there are folks from our healthcare deserts, people who don't have quality healthcare. And so, that is one of the things that pushed me towards public service. Another thing that was a lesson in overcoming to me is when I was 29, I was in a very significant car wreck and had a brain injury, a broken neck, spinal cord injury, and damage to my lungs, heart, and internal organs. So that I had to have surgery for a year, and doctors said I wouldn't walk again, or much less go back to work. And so I had to persevere, through the grace of God. Had to persevere through that. And so as I look, as bad as these things are, with COVID, with preparation for the mass critical care plan, which thankfully we avoided, which is the plan about who gets ventilators and service and who doesn't. But each of these things that happen each day in this, what's been a very long and stressful deployment for me and others, I'm reminded that it's not my worst day, and that God saw me through the valleys in the past, and that he'll see us all through this valley. And so I guess my message to the people out there who are having a tough time right now, who are losing their job, or they're entrepreneurs and they're wondering how they're going to survive in the face of all this, is we will get through this, right? God is good. We will get through this, and we'll get through it together. And, I think go back to the worst moments in your life, and you got through that, and you'll get through this. And so that would be, kind of my message to the people. It's not about all the things I went through as a young man. Look at the things you went through as a young woman, or things you've been through in the past, as in your 20s or middle ages or whatever. You made it through that. You're going to make it through this.
Thank you, Judge. We really appreciate you and appreciate your leadership. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Dr. Hinojosa, you lead one of the largest school districts in the country, and we have been following your successes for many years now. I read an article about you where in Forbes magazine where you said that there's a quote that you use with the students, and you tell the students, you got to do you, but it's not about you. And I think that is really a profound quote. And I'm just wondering, how a man who grew up in an immigrant family and grew up in some rough neighborhoods and went through desegregation in DISD ends up going through all of that and leading DISD. How do you stay focused on making it about the mission and not about yourself?
Well, thank you, Tony. First of all, thank you for having us. This is a great panel. We got two of my heroes, and only people from my generation will remember the Mod Squad, but that's what you got. One black, one white, one brown, and we're here working together so everybody can relate to us. Yeah, and that quote is important because it's not always been true for me. People used to make fun of me for my accent and the fact that I was an immigrant and the fact that I grew up in Oak Cliff. And in fact, the soft bigotry of low expectations that George Bush talks about were prevalent. I only applied to 2 universities because I didn't think I could get in anywhere else because people had low expectations. And when I tell people, part of it is you got to do you. Now, I'm very proud to be an immigrant. I tell everybody that I'm an immigrant. I'm very proud to be from Oak Cliff. But it's not about me. People don't care about my being individually. It's what value do you add to the organization. So, but you have to, you're a set of your experiences, and growing up in Oak Cliff and people looking down on you. And then I went off to college, and then, I've learned that you got to make your own magic. And it's not what happens to you. I'm a big fan of Covey. It's how you respond. And I remember getting a young lady pregnant when I was in college, and I became a 21-year-old dad, and I thought my whole world was going to end. But somehow we both made it through there. That marriage did not survive, but I ended up with a great son. I ended up coming back to the city that I love to be a teacher and a coach. And then people just started taking care of me, and people would help me and mentor me, and people saw something in me that I maybe never saw in myself, and other people took care of me. And so my career just kind of expanded from there, but it hadn't always been perfect. And so what I like to tell people is, every job I've ever had has been the best job I ever had, but none of them started that way. You always go through stumbles and struggles and figure things out. But if you work hard and you develop skills and you're humble, and people want a problem solver. They don't want a whiner. That's why they like people who are optimistic in the light of very difficult things. If you can come across as saying, look, we'll get through this, and we may not know all the answers right now. And if we think strategically, we may not know everything, but in a month, I'll know a whole lot more than I know now. We're going to come up with a solution. And that's why the 3 leaders that you have on your panel, I think we've all kind of practiced that. And we know that it's not about us, but we know that a lot of people are depending on us. What Cynt inherited at the Mavericks, a great basketball organization, but she turned that culture around because she was doing the right thing for the right people all the time. Clay Jenkins, just like right now, he gets some criticism, but when we have to make decisions, we would all prefer to make consensus decisions. Consensus decisions are easy to make, and easier harder to make, but easier to implement because you involve a lot of people. But sometimes in a crisis, you got to make command decisions, and we don't have time to have a committee if people's lives are depending on things and decisions we have to make. So, but you have to know that you have to be able to take it sometimes. And I know the lowest point in my professional career is when I had to lay off 1,000 teachers in October of 2008 because no money was stolen or missing. We just overspent the money we had. And if we didn't correct it at that moment, Dallas' future legacy for Dallas ISD would have been significantly inhibited. So sometimes you just have to take the heat. 2 things helped me be a superintendent for 25 years. Number 1, I'm not a politician, but I understand politics. I used to teach government. And number 2, I was a basketball referee. Everybody's always yelling at me. So you got to develop a little thick skin, dust yourself off and keep going, because people are depending on you to make important decisions for the greater good. Back to, it's not about, you got to do you got to be proud of who you are, but it's not about you. You're serving other people, and your decisions impact a lot of people for a long time.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa, and thank you for the sense of humor. I think that's always a marker of a great leader as well. Ms. Marshall, Dr. Hinojosa referenced culture, and Peter Drucker famously said, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And you came in as the great culture transformation Wonder Woman, and we are just in awe of you and what you've done. But what would you say to leaders right now in their own organizations, small, large, family, whatever unit they're leading? What would you say to leaders about how to tend to culture, what we should be doing right now for the future?
I'd say a few things, and you know me, I can talk, so I say a lot. But first of all, you have to engage your people. There's a quote that says, "People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." You've got to engage them and let them know that you care about them as individuals. As Dr. Hinojosa said, I mean, we are going through a crisis, and people need leadership in a crisis, and they need leaders who care about them, which of course is why one of the first things we did was let our employees know that they were going to get paid. I mean, we didn't want them to have any kind of financial insecurity as they're trying to fight a health battle and a health crisis that we're all fighting. So you have to engage your employees, let them know you care about them, let them know at this point it truly is all about them. It's not about you. I think you have to revisit your values. I've actually done that in the time I've been sequestered in this house, which has been quite amazing, just being up in here, locked up in here for 5 weeks or so with Mr. Kenneth Marshall. By the way, today is my 37th anniversary. So Clay Jenkins, I need to get back to work so I can make it to 38. So it's been crazy, but I've been saying, what can I do to help be a better leader when I get back? And so I have revisited our values. And part of our transformation, as you know, when I came into the Mavs, we put a set of values together that spells crafts. And our hashtag is perfect our crafts. So it's character, respect, authenticity, fairness, teamwork, and safety. And I have actually stepped back to reflect in detail on each one of those values. And I'm asking myself the question, how are we doing on those right now? What would our employees say about those right now? Are we living up to those values in this crisis? And so I'm trying to communicate a lot with them, keep them really, really close, and really trying to step up the game around the values, because the culture is all about those values, all about the behaviors and our actions. And then we're starting to really now have some conversations about defining our future. We're not going to let it define us. Something good has to come out of this, and we have to be bigger, better, and different when we come out. So trying to define the future and engaging all of our employees in defining that and deciding how we're going to be better. How are we going to serve better? I'll tell you later, because I know I'm talking here a lot about my new .com. I'll tell you that at the end, my big revelation about my leadership and my personal platform that I'm standing on now as a result of this. But engaging the people, revisiting the values, being honest as a leader, being very transparent with your people, and then engaging them to help define the future. Those are the things that I'm trying to do to make sure our culture withstands this and gets even better as we plan.
Well, thank you, and congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Marshall on your anniversary date, and thank you for sharing part of it with us. That's really very generous and extraordinary.
37 years, just like turning the water into wine. It's working though.
It's working. You did, and we look forward to learning more about what you're going to be launching. I do want to take a moment. I forgot to do this earlier. We are on all social media channels as well. So if you want to comment on something that you're hearing that is really wonderful, just use the hashtag #LeadersRespond. Judge Jenkins, Dr. Hinojosa mentioned the Mod Squad, and I have to tell you this, as an Italian in Dallas, I sit back and I watch you and how cool and calm and collected you are. And I just stand in marvel over that, because I want to learn how to do that myself. It might be too late, but I have not quite mastered that. But you have been asked to lead in some really major crises around healthcare. And you're a lawyer. How did that prepare you to lead in a completely different field with the kind of steadfastness and the kind of discipline and the focus that you do? How is that possible?
Sure. So,
My main question is, how do you suffer fools so well? That's really my main question, but go for it.
sure. So I think I realized early on in leadership that people don't make good decisions when they're angry or disrespected or attacked, right? And so I try to keep everything calm and based on reason. And I think the law prepares you for that, right? Because the law is not about what happened, it's what you can prove. It's about evidence. And so I'm looking at the evidence. And in a public health emergency, the evidence is what science says. As far as, you know, I don't want to say suffer fools because I don't want to categorize anyone as a fool. But, you know, I will say this, different viewpoints and different things are going to come at you very fast in an emergency, right? And so I deal with emergencies the same way that I deal with every other day in life. First thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I spend 15 minutes in prayer. I've got this little thing called 365promises.com that I read, and I send those out to, you know, my friends. And my friends right now include the, you know, police chief and the city manager and all the commissioners and many others. Thanks. I'm sitting on my front porch, so he's brought my mail. But so I think that's important. You center down early with how you're going to conduct yourself that day before you start looking at emails about different, you know, viewpoints, people attacking you, whatever's going on. And then you just focus on being calm, treating other people the way that you want to be treated, because I think that is so incredibly important. And then when it comes to this thing that we're in now, you get your advice, and this is true whether you're running a business or whether you're running a county. You get your advice from the people who have trained their whole life for this moment. And those people are the CDC, the local public health authority, heads of epidemiology, the study of epidemics, and heads of infectious disease and infectious disease specialists, which is what this is. You don't want to get your advice from politicians, right? You don't want to get your advice from other health professionals, right? If you have cancer, go to an oncologist, don't go to a dentist. But if you're dealing with an epidemic, go to an epidemiologist. Infectious disease, go to infectious disease doctors. So I think when we do that, it puts us in a place where we can stay calm because we've got a guiding star, and that's science. And then we got to know, you know, and we've got our guiding principles of our life, which don't change just because you're on a mountaintop or you're in a valley. Sorry, somebody's running a weed eater. And can I say one other thing?
Certainly.
Happy anniversary, Kenneth and Cynt. And Michael, I will never make fun of anyone's accent.
Thank you. Thank you. And thanks for joining my team call a couple of weeks ago. That was amazing for you to join our huddle and for them to hear directly from you. And I know how busy you are, and for you to take 30 minutes that morning to do that, I'll never forget it. Thank you.
Hey, I was honored. Thanks.
Well, Judge, we do want you to know that we appreciate your leadership style, the calm manner in which you deal with this on a daily basis. And so your focus and steadfastness has paid off for our community, and we are grateful. Dr. Hinojosa, I wanted to ask you, you know, so many in Dallas, up until just a few months ago, the wind was behind all of our sails, whether it was business, personal, things were going great here in Dallas. And you've had the experience of, you know, having great successes, doing a turnaround yourself and Just a few months ago, you had to deal with a tornado and making some very quick decisions about closing schools and being a logistics expert. And then suddenly you have to deal with this. What do you say to leaders who are faced with, the wind is in our sails and everything is going great, and all of a sudden, boom, we're in trouble? How do you keep the hope up?
Well, I think people need to have someone that they respect to make sure that you respect the decisions that they make. And you don't need to panic when a crisis occurs. When the tornado hit, that tornado nor this pandemic were on my calendar. But if you don't know how to pivot and start solving problems and looking, like Judge Jenkins just said, looking at the data and looking at the impact that it's going to have, and knowing the human psyche of people. And you need to be empathetic, because people are going through things that were out of their control, and now their whole worlds have been rocked. But they're also looking for someone who's going to step up and put together a guiding light. And one of the things that's a saying, I have a lot of Joseisms, and one of them is a saying that I heard is that people who say that things can't get done get interrupted by people who are doing them. So there's always somebody, and that's what I love about Dallas. That's why people ask me, why do you do this job? You could have retired a long time ago. I said, because I love this district and I love this city. And there's something about the can-do spirit in Dallas that this tornado wasn't going to destroy us. This pandemic was not going to destroy it. Education, we are the last industry to change. Every other industry has changed. We're the last, even the taxi cabs had to change. Uber did that for them. And so I think that you go back 100 years, we did education. We had the Carnegie Unit. We have 5 to 6, 7 periods a day. We have lunch. I think this actually, you can invent new things, and you can become more creative. And I'm so proud, just like Cynt's so proud of her people, I'm so proud of our teachers. And I just saw a demonstration about how our teachers have stepped up and kept some kind of quality instruction going on, and how the community has stepped up and helped us get devices, but it's still not good enough. So we're learning from this crisis, and I'm launching a new opportunity called connectivity is one of our biggest issues that's still lingering. While the hotspots have solved some problems, I'm personally taking on a thing called Operation Connectivity. And it's going to involve the city, the county, the community, philanthropic, governments, the state, the feds. Everybody's going to be involved in this. And I've already started talking about this, because from this crisis, we can get better. And one of the things that's helped us in Dallas do things better is you take things that are amiss and then you make them better. P-TECH's a great example, where we took an idea. I believe in the IRS, not the federal IRS. It's incubate, replicate, and scale. And when you have an issue that goes wrong, if you find a way to incubate a solution, then make sure that it works, then you replicate it. Then once it's replicated, now you can go to scale. So I think if you have that kind of mindset, regardless of what happens to you, you can find a solution that is even much more creative than you ever thought that you could do. And so, like that axiom goes, never waste a good crisis. When something happens, be ready to step up and find solutions that people can see and that you can buy together and make it better for your community.
Thank you, Dr. Hinojosa. In the literature there, the conversation around transformational leadership versus transactional leadership. And, transactional leaders are those that use their position of authority to inflict something and get something in response, right? It's a quid pro quo. The transformational leader really digs deep and gets their influence from the relationships and the trust that they have built over time. And in that regard, we look to authors and scientists and whoever is in our field that can kind of inspire us and help us to be in the leadership roles that we are in. Dr. Hinojosa referenced Covey a little bit ago, and Judge Jenkins talked about who are the experts that you go to in a particular issue. Ms. Marshall, tell us a little bit about who influenced you. I mean, I'm sure you knew everything in the world that there was to know about basketball. Talk to us about who actually influenced your leadership the most, and how you bring those folks to your daily decision making.
Awesome. Thank you. First of all, let me also tell Dr. Hinojosa, I love what you're talking about with Operation Connectivity. And I'll tell you right now publicly, you have the support of the Dallas Mavericks with that. And you also have my my personal support with that, because whether we want to believe it or not, we still have a digital divide in this country. And I've spent many years of my life trying to help close that. So we are your partners on Operation Connectivity. Love, love, love that. Okay, in terms of influence, of course, my mother influenced my leadership style and influenced me from the standpoint of really teaching me how to focus and how to actually love people, how to listen to people, and how to lead them from the heart. So she taught me how to put my heart into it. I have been very blessed in this job that people embraced me, and they're teaching me the business of basketball. And they know that, you know, I came there obviously to lead, and came there because of my leadership experience, a lot of it that I learned at AT&T in 36 years. So clearly the leaders there, Randall Stevenson and Bill Blaze and others influenced me, and I just had a fabulous experience there. But when I look at it now, people are pouring into me, my own team. I am leading a team of terrific people. I told them the other day, the way they have stepped up in this crisis, and the way we have kind of shifted to really focus on our people first, and then the community, and the amazing things that are being done there. These are the people who are teaching me the business of basketball every day. People tease me a lot. You know, my boss is out there, Mark Cuban. He is out there very vocal about some wonderful things. So also watching him step up and be bold, which of course I'm a bold person anyway, so I'm feeling even bolder right now. He's also very influential. But really it's my team right now. That's where I'm getting my energy from. That's who, I mean, they're influencing me in ways that you just would not believe. So I've just been very blessed that I've had great teachers in my life. I've had great educators that I've looked to. And so my influences are everywhere, places that you wouldn't even think about.
That's great. And since you brought up Mark Cuban, you know, part of his greatness is because he comes from Pittsburgh. All great things come from Pittsburgh. I just needed to mention that real quickly.
I'm sure
Judge
they
Jenkins,
do. I'm sure they do. They come out of California and Alabama too.
Judge, you know, part of the transformational leadership and the power in getting things done comes from building trust over time. And you have built a lot of trust with this community. How did you come to understand the importance of being consistent over time, making sure that trust was part of the equity that you deal in? How did you get that influenced in your life?
Well, that's a core value, you know, that I think we all intuitively understand, and we understand early on as kids. You know, if you don't trust your coach, if you don't trust your teammates, if you don't trust your classmates, your family, it's hard to get things done in the long run, right? And so we're very blessed in this particular incident. There's very few blessings in here, but one of the blessings is the teams that are working together. Mostly these are the same people that work through tornadoes, police shootings, Ebola, and other things. So we're not just meeting each other for the first time. You know, we've got a track record of saying what we mean and doing what we say. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about all the people working. And so that, you know, that helps tremendously. And I think it was Cynt that said earlier, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And so I think having been in office for a little while, and, you know, 9 years now, and having been through some things together, I and you, the people of North Texas, you know, I know about your spirit, and I know how you rise to a challenge. And, you know, I hope that you know that I'll make mistakes, but they'll be mistakes of the head and not mistakes of the heart, because my heart is to serve you and to the best I can keep as many of you safe as possible at a time when we will have deaths every day and we will have infections every day. And so, that comes, I hate to keep going back to my faith, but a lot of that comes from faith. I have tremendous trust in God to see me through. And I look at the people around me as children of that God. And so I have tremendous faith in my team. And they're, even though they're younger than me, most of my team are quite a bit younger than me, I have faith in those guys, and I look up to them as they, bust their butts and they do things that they didn't know they were capable of doing 5 weeks ago. So I look up to that, and just, surrounded by so many great leaders. Michael and Osa and I talk at least an hour every week about, leadership. Cynt, is a great leader, and then so many other great leaders. I've called them when they've gone through family tragedy or whatnot. Now they're calling me just with words of encouragement or say a prayer or whatever. And so that's a huge lift as well. And a great family. Better say that in case you're watching, family. You're awesome. I got a great family.
Thank you, Judge. Dr. Hinojosa, you talked about Stephen Covey a bit, and he builds his whole 7 Habits book around this notion of paradigms and how our paradigms are shaped by the conditioning that we've received, and how it's very difficult to shift our paradigms, and our paradigms are only partially ever accurate at any given time. And just what's your methodology for going about and shifting paradigms for this whole new reality that we will face? What are the innovation practices that you use that won't say, hey, this is the way we've always done it, now this is how we're going to do it going forward?
Yeah, and I learned a lot of lessons from the Covey. And, part of it, he spends a lot of time talking about building relationships and making deposits in the emotional bank account. Growing up, being a preacher's kid and growing up in Oak Cliff, I knew every curse word in 2 languages. But when I internalized the 7 habits of highly effective people, I've said 2 curse words since October of 1994, because I'm a leader, and that's when I first became a superintendent, and people watch everything you say and do. And if you're not authentic, and if you come across one way with certain groups of people and others a different way, then people are going to see through you. They're not going to follow you. Also, the whole premise of the 7 habits is building relationships, building that circle of influence. And I do that. I practice that all the time. In fact, I have quarterly meetings with my direct reports. And the third question I always ask them, what relationships have you built in the last 6 months that have benefited you, your team, or us? Or what relationships are you going to build in the next 3 months that you're going to need in the future? And one of them has to be external. So you have to reach outside of Dallas ISD. And how do you build those relationships? When I do my entry plan, I've done the same entry plan every time I've come in as a superintendent. I go 100 days and I listen to 100 people. I don't come in and say, you want to buy a watch? I just got this watch. I say, no. You ask 100 people 10 questions, and it's a lot about relationships. You're building relationships as you go. And then the emerging themes become very obvious that you need to work on. Then that's what can spur innovation. That's when you say, okay, now we have a level of readiness where we can go to the next level. And I do believe, though, that incrementalism is innovation's worst enemy, because we've always done it this way. We're very comfortable in this way, and so we're going to go back to this way. But when you have a pandemic, when you have a crisis, a mini crisis or a major crisis, the tornado, we were in it by ourselves. The pandemic, everybody's in it with us. So I think it has created a natural sense of urgency, and how we respond is really going to be important. But people will trust you if you've taken time to build relationships. To me, it's with my school board, it's with my staff, and it's with my community. And I actually have my calendar color-coded about how much time I spend in each part of that triangle, so that the students who are in the middle of the triangle will benefit that my job is to do nothing. My job is to talk. My job is to listen. And my job is to interact with Clay Jenkins and Cynt Marshall and you, Tony, so that Dallas ISD will be in a better shape somewhere, somehow.
I appreciate that so much. I have learned so much from each of you already, and our time is coming to a close. And as it does, I was hoping that each of you might just reflect and share a little bit about how this time has changed you, how it's changed your thinking, what's different in your life, and how you're going to approach your future. Ms. Marshall, if you would respond to that, I would appreciate it.
All right, thanks. I sent out something a couple of weeks ago called mynew.com. And every week I send my team a weekly letter. So every Friday they get hashtag my 2 cents. We have our team huddle, so we spend a lot of time together. I spent time with all the women in our organization this morning. We have coffee with Cynt. And just real quick on what Dr. Hinojosa just said, I told them over the next 2 weeks, I want them to reach out and get to know 10 more people in the organization, take 10 minutes to find out 10 new things about them. Because one of the reasons we're so successful here in Dallas, I think, in terms of responding to a crisis, we know each other. We know each other, we trust each other. And so I had to comment on just what he said, just the value of trusting each other and being in this together and knowing that we can rely on each other. But my new.com is about 5 different things. It's like, here's what I'm mindful of these days. I am mindful of compassion, that people really need it. I mean, people who we just didn't think needed it, they really need compassion. We have it to give. I mean, that's where we start. We started from our heart. So compassion, communication. We can't over communicate with people. We can't over communicate with our teams. We can't over communicate with each other. We need to pick up the phone and call each other. People need to hear our voices. Community. I've realized this community is really, really bigger than I even thought it was. And there are people in this community who really need us. There are healthcare workers who need us to help pay for their child care. There are all kinds of needs in our community. And fortunately, I think the Mavs have been out there, trying to step up to all of those community needs. And then compromise. I am a cancer survivor, diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer in December of 2010. And I had to stop and realize I do have a compromised immune system. And so I have to take care of myself. I have to think about my physical, mental, and spiritual health and make sure I don't compromise it so that I'm in a position to take care of other people. And I had kind of gotten away from that over the past, 9 or 10 years. And then compliance. Judge Jenkins, I'm telling you, it was hard at first to accept that we had to stay home, but it's for all the right reasons. And so we talked to our team about complying and listening to the experts and being appreciative of the fact that we do have experts. And so we have to listen to them and not focus on the date, but focus on the data. And so as a leader, I want to make sure that when I go back, I'm amplifying that new.com. I'm really looking at compassion, communication, who really is in my community, what are the things that they really need. And then I'm hoping that we can show acknowledgement and appreciation to the people who really are essential, the people who are out there really serving us every day, and that we do address some of these longstanding issues that we have in our country around health disparities, around the digital divide, around who has access to technology and capital. And so those things have been amplified, and I know here in Dallas, we'll address them, but I'm committed now. I've really, I'm getting a sense of hope out of this, that we're going to be creative and innovative and address some longstanding issues. mynew.com.
We are grateful for your voice in the community, and we look forward to hearing much more of it. So thank you very much. Judge Jenkins, how about you? How has this experience changed you personally? What is your focus going to be after you've experienced this?
After this is over with, Tony, I'm going to take a vacation. But I think, by the grace of a mom who's a saint and worked 2 jobs after my father died, I was the first person in my family to have the opportunity to go to college. And so right before this happened, I was like so many of you taking my blessings for granted, right? My wife and I's big decision the week before this was where we would go on vacation and how many family members we would take with us. Now our big decisions are, what are we going to do in the 1 to 2 hours a week I get off from this deployment. But I think really all of us should look at that. We had so many blessings, and we take those blessings for granted, simple blessings. Really this should focus us on this. And then within this, so like I pull my mama out of a senior living facility, independent living facility, and had her come live with us. And so I don't get a whole lot of time off, but I get time to spend time around my family. And so just focusing on the blessing of family, maybe you want to kill each other because you're trying to work 2 jobs with a bunch of kids under feet who are screaming. I can't believe that I've made it through this without a kid coming in. But, it is a blessing too. So I'm looking forward to getting some semblance of normal life, at least a normal clock back at the end of this, and then not taking for granted those blessings that on a personal note that I've found I'm guilty of taking advantage of and taking for granted at times. As I look at it from more of a macro standpoint, I think as a community, as the most uninsured community in America, Northern America percent, raw people, we're more Los Angeles and New York and the places that are bigger than us, Chicago. So I think we look at that, and maybe what we see from this is, if for the people that before said, yeah, that's too bad that folks are working 40 hours a week but have no health coverage, someday somebody needs to do something about that. Maybe now they can see, wow, this affects me. As people get sick in the community, and we're talking about public health, this affects what happens to me and my grandfather, and my mom. And so maybe the impetus will be there as we come out of this to look at ways so that when people work 40 hours a week, right, they can afford life's necessities, pass on a sense of optimism to their children, and that would include being able to afford primary care coverage. We'd be in a lot better shape in this pandemic if people had primary care coverage and access to testing and the things that we need. So that'd be my answer to that. And if we're done, I'll stay on for Michael's, but thank you so much for all of you for being on this, for giving me an opportunity to visit with you. And the last thing I would say is we will get through this. Together, we'll get through this. No matter what you're going through, it will get better. Do not lose heart, because we will get through this.
Thank you, Judge, and we appreciate the heart you bring to your work every day. Dr. Hinojosa, how has this changed you and your outlook for the future?
Well, to me, my wife gets mad when I say this. I've had a great life, and so for me, I'm living on borrowed time. So anything's good, I'm ready to go whenever I need to go. But what has really been obvious to me is how the greatest country in the world got brought to its knees almost overnight. And what we need to do is we need to be more thoughtful, more reflective, but what kinds of systems that we need to put in our community, our state, our country, and in this world to be ready to respond to something like this. We were going gangbusters. We had Luka Magic. We were going to the playoffs. Everything was great. I went to the Maverick game. I think I saw Judge Jenkins and Cynt at the last Maverick game, and then boom, they shut it down. And then when the NBA shut down the season, I knew this was something much bigger than what we'd ever been through. And then the fact that we weren't really prepared to deal with this on a huge scale is one thing that I've learned, that life can be fragile, and all these good things that we have can be fragile, and that one thing can really mess it up. So we need to do a better job of preparing for the worst and expecting the best. Like the good to great, you confront the brutal facts, but you never lose hope. And that's what will get us through all of this.
Thank you. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Social Venture Partners and all of the men and women that make up Social Venture Partners, We want to thank our esteemed panel. You all are fantastic from my heart to yours. I so appreciate you taking the time to be with us and be with our audience today. You know, the work that we do is critically important. And for 20 years, Social Venture Partners have been working with the nonprofits that are working on the front lines right now. And it is our work partially that has strengthened them and helped them to be of service to this community. So if you're interested in doing that kind of work, please join us. If you're interested in supporting that kind of work, we are a nonprofit ourselves and certainly can use your financial support as well as the expertise that you bring from your various business backgrounds. You know, we would not be able to do this work, bring these kinds of programs to you without the help of our sponsors. So we thank Bank of America again. We are grateful to Forward DFW and the Dallas Morning News for helping to spread our message about what we are doing here. And we also have another sponsor, Restoration Specialists, who have joined us, and we are so grateful for the work that they're doing in our community as they ready office buildings of all varieties, universities, schools, whatever, with their disinfectant solutions. And they have a short, very short video to share with us, and we hope that you will stay on to see that. It is just 30 seconds or so, and give them thanks for sponsoring our event as well. You know, it is said about the transformational leader that the transformational leader brings the whole community to a higher good. And I want to just thank each of you for bringing our community to a higher good prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, and we know and are certain that you will continue to do that work when we are on the other side of this. So thank you all so very much for joining us, and we appreciate it. Have a great one. Bye-bye.